Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Costa, one half of the Nitty Gritty Show, and I'm here again, as promised. My mic should be better. Somebody let me know in the chat if I have any issues, but I did a test recording already, so I know just about how I sound. So should be good. Did that about a week ago. Actually, I forgot to delete that, so it's probably still up there. I'm just acting a fool, just making sure my vocals are right. So if I look goofy, if I'm rapping off beat, all that good stuff, that was just me having a good time. To make sure this thing right up here is working right, so that way you guys can hear me as clearly as possible at home. I give you guys this one little tidbit about podcasting, or anytime you decide to do anything in this lane of entertainment, information, call it what you want. The most important thing is your audio quality, right? And for those who struggle stream with me, those last two streams, you understand, like, if you got through the whole thing, you're a champ, because I don't know how you did it. The audio was trash. But I finally fixed it. It looks like what happened is I have an AI mic noise canceling on my Asus computer. And I was going through the settings, and I'm pretty decent with the Windows platform, Windows 11, Windows 10, even Vista I was pretty decent with. And I'm like, I don't get it. All my settings are right. I'm going through OBS. Everything seems fine. I didn't understand why the audio was so trash. So then I decided, let me look at this Asus dashboard. And sure enough, because there's another overlay of settings, I actually had to go in there and change everything. And I only thought to do it because I have my monitor extended to 2 screens. And I remember I was having issues with that. I was going through the Windows settings, like it still wasn't working. I had to check something off in the Asus settings. So for those with computers, they're made by multiple manufacturers. Sometimes you have to go into a manufacturer may have another overlay of settings. Samsung does this with a lot of their devices as well. So just throwing that out there for you for free. But anyways, we shouldn't be struggle streaming today. We should be live, clear, and direct. So I hope you guys are all with me. And this is going to be a continuation of our previous episode where we talked about presidential matters. I really went into the various platforms for Trump and Kamala Harris, or sorry, why did I say Kamala? Kamala Harris. I know better, and I messed up. But anyway, so I went into both Kamala's and Donald's platforms, and of course, we didn't see much there. We're going to get into that. So we're going to continue that, and I'm going to really break down the office of president. So that way, when these people are promising you this and promising you that, you can see firsthand, well, what's the real strategy to making jobs better, to making my country feel more secure, to being hard on matters of justice or crime. How does a president actually get that job done? And I'm going to share with you guys how that happens and what to really look for when they're promising this and promising that. And this is going to help give a lot of information. And I'm going to give you also places you can go to find this information for yourself. With the Nitty Gritty Show, we're about educating, and it's about not me just spitting off the top of my head and giving you my personal opinion on matters, but how to direct you to real tangible info, not a biased format from this party, this group, that group, whether you're conservative or liberal. It's about saying, okay, what do the respected EDUs have to say that specialize in this research, like the Brookings Institute, Pew Research, places like that, or certain schools like Johns Hopkins, or we understand you have entities like the Cleveland Clinic, right? Or it's just going to a .gov source of itself to see what information is available, right? Now, conspiracy theorists would say even that could be skewed. I get it, but it goes through a higher form of rigor, if you will, and scrutiny as far as information is put out. So that's a little bit more trustworthy than maybe a bias.org or a nonprofit that has a specific mission they're trying to fulfill, and they may contort efforts to push their agenda, right? So we're trying not to be gender biased when we do this show. I've expressed people who I would vote for and all of that. I'm not a nonprofit, so I'm not restricted to not express how I feel about a thing. But I try to keep my feelings as a second or third consideration when giving the information on Nitty Gritty Show, right? Anyways, other than that, my best part is not with me at the moment. She's downstairs with Zuri. Zuri was almost asleep, but not quite, so she couldn't join me on this fine platform today. But just know my boo is always with me. Always with me. You know what I'm saying? Always with me. I don't play about mine. Yeah, I'm 40 now, so I can run around here saying, I don't play about mine. Y'all know old heads love saying, I don't play about my wife. I don't play about my woman. I don't play about mine. So anyways, shout out to my boo. and my other boo, Zuri. So downstairs. So, and then also I want to get into some current news. So, anyways, current news, because I couldn't skip over this, right? I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on current news going forward, unless it's just so crazy I just got to. This news story was kind of like that. I could, but I'm not gonna try to eat up our time with that. But I have to address it. So we had the situation with the shooting out there in Georgia, and this took place. I think this place is like just west of Athens, like northwest of Atlanta, about 45 minutes away from the Atlanta area. So from what I can see, it looked fairly diverse somewhat. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Georgia. It ain't Atlanta, it's Georgia, but fairly diverse. Excuse me, remind me of my days of living in the South, right? Tennessee. So, anyways, interesting story, a very sad story. We had Colt Gray, or the suspect, because he hasn't been found guilty yet, so let's use proper terms. But we have the suspect, Colt Gray, and then his father, also Colin Gray, was charged. Interesting key points about this, and I'll run through it quick. Colt was actually questioned by the FBI back in May of 2023 for threats he made. I believe these threats were made while playing a video game. I think it was like a Call of Duty kind of situation, but he had made threats alarming enough that the FBI came and investigated him. So that's, I mean, anytime the FBI gets involved, that's pretty serious. Then in December of 2023, Colin Gray, who is Colt's father, decides to give Colt the present of an AR-15. I'm assuming if it's December, maybe Christmas, right? But that was a gift that he received from his father, an AR-15. So as a father, because it's the FBI, they won't question your kids without a adult present, because technically Colt was a minor. He was 14 at the time of the killing, could have been 13 at the time of questioning, right? So actually should have been, because that was more than a year ago. So he no question, he was like 13 at the time they questioned him in May of last year. So here's someone who was 13 at the time of being questioned. So automatically, because the FBI is involved, they do things by the book for the most part. And I mean, that's why they have like a 97% conviction rate. But the feds is after you, it's a wrap. They question them, so obviously the parents are there for the questioning. And despite the FBI taking your son's threat so seriously that they would come all the way down to Georgia to talk to you, you decide, I'm going to give this child who's made threats an AR-15, not a pistol, not a pellet gun, not a bow and arrow. Mind you, all of those things can be lethal if used at the right distance and shooting at the right, areas of the body. But you get an AR-15, which is definitely lethal. And it kind of brings me to a comment that was made between the vice presidents recently, because Tim Walz talked about how the weapons he carried in war shouldn't be sold on the street. And that's what he meant. It's not that he actually went to war, guys. Y'all got so caught up in that. What he's just trying to say is, a member of the military who are all trained on weapon. Everybody in the military weapon qualifies. I don't care if they're a cook. I don't care if they do admin. I don't care if they actually are 11 Bang Bang, meaning 11 Bravo, meaning they're infantry, or 68 whiskey like myself, meaning you're a combat medic, meaning you out there with that thing and the real thing, right? There's this situation where people don't understand that in the military, everybody goes through basic training. All forces. And guess what? Everybody has to learn basic qualifications of being a soldier. The act of being a soldier, which is going to war. Everybody gets trained on a weapon. Shout out to my boo out there in the comments talking about how the parents need to be held accountable. And they do. Because why in the world are you having a conversation with the parents about committing a crime, and the parents do something stupid like give their child an AR-15, mind you, a weapon that I used. Now I can say this straight up, a weapon I carried in Iraq. Look at my record. I was out there in the sandbox doing that, carrying that thing, and I also had my Beretta on my chest because I'm a medic. I need something I can get to quick. All right, I can still do it if I had to. But shout out to other young boys joining the military, right? So they get him a weapon used for warfare, and he's running around with an AR-15. And then, as we know, this month, he commits a crime that kills 2 teachers, 2 students, and injures several others, right? And it's interesting because what really pissed me off about this story initially, because it's another school shooting. We're used to this, right? But what they did at first was they had pictures of a young black man who was a victim, actually. And then they had the story, Colt Gray kills, blah, 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 school shooting, right? But because you used the thumbnail of the young black man's picture who was actually a victim who was killed, right? It would have you thinking that maybe he was the perpetrator, but it wasn't. And all you have to do is do a quick Google search. But most people know, or at least people in entertainment know, that the masses are lazy and they won't even do a simple Google search. But if you do a quick Google search, I'm gonna share my screen. Quick Google search, Colt Gray, right? Georgia. And there he is, right here. This is him, right? That's Colt Gray. Blonde hair. Well, looks like it's dyed blonde. Doesn't look like a natural blonde. And then looking at his parents, I doubt he's a natural blonde because they're brunettes as well. But there he is. That's your perpetrator, right? If you go a little bit further down and scroll, you can then see the victims. They were in here earlier when I looked. Where they at? Where they at? Where they at? There's the father, right? You know, looking real sad, but at the same time, real dumb. And here's the victims right here. And it's really sad too, because two white teachers, the young men he killed, you can even see in this picture down here, these were young men of color. This boy right here, I would assume off appearance, Latino, possibly, could be white, but or maybe some other ethnic background, but nonetheless, the dark hair, the brown skin, handsome boy too. I assume that he was something. And then you have a young black boy, both killed. Maybe they was wearing them out in a game or something online. I don't know if the motivations of the killing are quite out yet, but we know that the motivations don't matter. He was previously motivated, hence why they were looking into him in the first place. So this is crazy. So a lot of people are wondering, like, why are the parents being held responsible? They're accomplice to the crime, like literally. They went out here and supplied him with the weapon, knowing he was already a danger. And that's the cases with a lot of these mass shootings. And it's funny because now conversations about, oh, black folks need to pipe down, y'all black on black violence is horrible. And yes, all crimes happen in higher proximity to you, right? Black people are oftentimes forced into clusters of living because when we escaped the South over a century ago, we went up north to Cleveland, to Detroit, to Chicago, to DC, to New York. And then what happens is in those urban environments, we tend to be forced into urban living situations where we're living literally on top of each other. So therefore, people, by comfortability of their own race and by proximity, literal proximity, the words that the FBI uses when it comes to crime, they tend to kill more of each other. But keep in mind, those killings in Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, here in DC even, New York, a lot of times, or LA, this is typically gang violence or associated criminal violence, meaning, unfortunately, a lot of these young people, and we're talking about the black ones right now at the moment, are engaged in some type of criminal activity that causes them to go after each other, whether it's drugs, gangs, repping their hood. Some of these young folks just don't care about their lives anymore, so they end up committing these crimes on each other. But you don't really hear about them committing crimes outside of their criminal cells and associations, right? That happens more so in other communities, especially white. And I got the stats for you. And if you don't believe me, you go to FBI, you'll find the same stats there. Y'all know I get all mines from the .govs. I should have left the website up, but I did not keep that one. I got so many thumbnails up. It's crazy. You'll understand why here in a little bit. But anyways, let's go over some numbers, and then we're going to move on with the rest of the show. 67% of domestic terrorism is committed by non-Hispanic whites, typically those who are associated to white supremacist organizations. Oh, shout out to Dr. Deneen Fields in the building. Let me drop a bomb for you real quick. I see you, shorty. Thanks for joining. And that's crazy. And you're right. The dad gave him the firearm. He needs to be held accountable. 90% of family killers, whether this is just simple murder or murder-suicide, 90% of family killers, non-Hispanic whites. I ain't making the numbers up. This is what the numbers are. Don't get mad at me if it looks like I'm coming for your community. I'm not. But if you want to bring up stats about black on black crime, let's bring about stats about crime, period. Because you're not hearing about us killing our families at the same rate of you guys killing your families. Because literally 90%, that means the other 10% are shared amongst blacks, Middle Easterns, Hispanic whites, Hispanics, period, right? We make up the other 10%. Y'all make up 90% of family killings, period. 90%. That's all y'all. I ain't, don't kill the messenger. I don't make the news, baby. I just report it. All right? 80% of school shooters, they look like your boy Colt Gray. That's right. 80% of school shooters, non-Hispanic whites. 52% of mass shooters, and the reason why, and I'm going to tell you why the numbers drop. 50% of mass shooters, also non-Hispanic whites. And the reason why the number is not higher is because how the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, how we define the crime of mass shooting. A mass shooting is considered any number 3 or more being injured. So yes, that means when them black boys shoot up the block and they knock down 3 opposing gang members, and sometimes that innocent mother or father, because crime is crime, we don't condone any of it. I get so sickened by hearing about these young black boys and young black girls killing each other over street beef. We need to stop the violence, period. I don't condone any of it. Let's just be clear. It's not that one crime is better than the other. We're just sticking to the fact of who's really harming people outside of their community and who should you really be afraid of. Don't be afraid of the young black boy. Because y'all kill your own family members, you should be afraid of your own son, your daughter, your husband, your uncle who's also white. If we're going by those numbers, don't clench your purse when a brother like me in a suit on a mission to make some money walks past you. I'm not going to harm you, boo. But guess what? The guy that lives with you might strangle you in your strangle you in your sleep and bury you in the backyard. That's a fact. I'm not making that up. And when we look at mass shooters, the only reason why the number looks like a half situation, even though y'all still top it, 52%, is because you guys are going out here shooting up schools, shooting up Las Vegas, doing all kind of atrocities out there in the name of, typically, not my words, according to the FBI, under the name or the guidance of white supremacy. Don't get mad at me. These are the facts. These are the stats. So this issue of crime, we need to take care of it. It's going to be big on the presidential ballot. So let's get to that. I want to go over the platform pages again. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I did that last episode, even though that episode is hard to watch because the volume is trash. The information is out there, but at least because my audio is better today, I'm going to point you to it again, and we'll go on from there. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Once again, you can go to donaldjtrump.com, and you can see his platform for what he's trying to do, and it stayed the same. Sealing the border, stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Number 5, I'm actually mad with. Actually, there's a few of them here on here I'm not even mad with, right? There's a couple of them that were straight up BS. I'm not going to go through that again. But like, for instance, 18 doesn't match with number 7, right? Because you can't say you're going to defend our constitutional rights, our Bill of Rights, our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. That one's not looking so great now, thanks to Colt Gray. But then on number 18, you're going to say deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Now, this goes directly with what we're talking about. Because the problem with this statement is that you're suggesting that someone who is pro-Hamas is a danger or a threat to a college campus. But guess what? We know that 80% of school shooters attribute their thought processes to white supremacy. Pro-Hamas people aren't killing people. They're just disrupting classes and regular scheduled programs. That's it. But you're saying that you're going to protect our First Amendment rights, freedom to speech. Part of freedom to speech is freedom to protest peacefully. And these protests have been peaceful, disruptive, but yet peaceful in classification because there hasn't been damage and no harm to life. You understand? That's fair. But then you're talking about making the college campus safe again. Well, you need to start looking closer at the white kids that go there, according to the FBI stats. That's crazy. But that's what this platform says. Now, also, you could go to Kamala's platform. I'll take you to it real quick. There it is. You can go to Kamala Harris, KamalaHarris.com, right? You can click on here. You can learn more about Vice President Harris, and then also her Vice President select, Tim Walz, right? As they're running for election. Problem is, I can be very critical of Trump because he actually has something on his platform for me to be critical of. We've heard Kamala, now that she's on the campaign trail, talk about her platform, things she wants to do. I think you guys should watch the interview she did recently. That was very eye-opening, but it's not something tangible I can read, right? So I'm not going to mention those things because it's not something tangible I have in front of me. I think she has some great ideas. I'm not mad at them. I like the fact that she's talking about, $50,000 for startup businesses. Shout out to all my people that I know out there who have startup businesses. That $50,000 credit would be huge because everybody knows the first 3 to 5 years of business are the most critical, but also the most expensive for any new business enterprise, right? But then also, she's talking about a $6,000 child credit. I think that's awesome. So she has some really good ideas, but put that on the platform, boo, for us to see. We don't have that many days left. I think we're at 60 something days left to the election, right? I didn't do my math on that earlier, but yeah, I want to say we're like less than 60 days away. This should be something that someone can look up and see your platform at this point. So I'm very critical of Kamala for that. I know she's been doing a lot of talking and reaching out, but this is a gaffe on the Harris campaign. They need to fix that. Just being honest. Like I said, I'm not going to push anybody one way or another. Just going to present the facts. And the fact is, you don't have anything up on your page. I think that's a miss. That's definitely a miss there. So they need to work on that. So that's that. So now, those are the platform pages. I put that out there. Go check those out. All right, that's some good information for you. I think I still have it. If you go in the description, I think I have the links are still there, so you can click on that. Go check that out. Right. So then, let's get into the office of the president. This is going to be very educational for the Nitty Gritty show today. We're going to really break down what can the president do, right? Their real powers, their influence. How is that power distributed and made actionable in the U.S., right? Because I think that's important because people say, oh, well, the president this, or the president should have did this, or the president should have did that. And then sometimes maybe you're right, maybe you're possibly wrong. We're going to break things down today and you'll see where. Yak. No, it's not yak, y'all. I'm just taking a little sip. Keep my mouth, Anyways, from getting dry. I'm doing a lot of talking right now. So, real quick, to qualify for president, the Constitution lists only 3 qualifications for the presidency. The president must be at least 35 years of age, be a natural-born citizen. And when they say natural-born citizen, that means just sanguine or just soil. Just sanguine is a Latin term for meaning of the blood, meaning your parents are natural citizens of the U.S. So for all those that ever questioned Obama, we knew who his mama was. His mama was a U.S. citizen. Never really mattered if he was born on Hawaii or if he was born here. His mom is a natural citizen, therefore making him a full citizen. So I never understood why that was up for debate. That was a stupid one. But y'all let Donald Trump, who gained popularity by bringing up these birther comments, and I knew plenty of black folks in the South that really got behind that back then. So when I hear about so much black support for Trump, that's never confused me because they've been supporting Trump ever since Obama ran for office. So this idea that all black people voted for Obama because he was black, I know for a fact that wasn't true. I knew too many Bamas in Tennessee that was talking about they were pro-Trump back then. And Trump wasn't even up on the ballot. They would just like the fact that he was a dude talking trash on the sidelines. So whatever. And then the third thing is must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. So you could be a full citizen, right? Let's say you live in Nicaragua or you live in, Ukraine. Oh, sorry, that's a bad example. You live in London, right? You're a natural citizen, you have your U.S. passport, but you've been living there for the last 20 years. And then you come to the States and you only been back in the States for like 5 years or whatever. Yeah, you don't qualify to be president. You have to live in the United States for 14 years total. If you spent most of your life in Australia, can't be president, bub. Sorry, doesn't work like that, right? Also, something to bring up too, because everybody's talking about, oh, my vote don't matter. This is how voting works, guys. So you have to have those qualifications, and through millions of Americans' votes, and in a presidential election every 4 years, the president is not, in fact, directly elected by the people because we are a republic, not a democracy. It's true. Instead, on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every 4th year, the people elect the members of the Electoral College, apportioned by the population apportioned by the population to the 50 states, one of each member of their congressional delegation, with the debate also including the District of Columbia, so they receive 3 votes. These electors then cast the votes for president. There are currently 538 electors in the Electoral College, meaning based off where you live, you cast a vote. Some states have more electoral votes than others, right? If you win the whole state, you win all. So let's say one member of the Electoral College represents so many people, right? What happens is you win all those electoral votes if the masses in that state overwhelmingly vote for that candidate. Winner takes all. So let's say you're in Georgia and you win by a margin of 2%. So that's how, in the case of Hillary, she won the popular vote, right? When you look at all the votes of the people, she won the popular vote, but then she lost the Electoral College because you start going to key states that she lost, like I think she lost Montana, I think she lost Wisconsin, I think she even lost Ohio. And some of those states, it was kind of close. It was like, oh, Trump only won by like a margin of 52% or this or that. But then you have these larger states like New York and California that did go blue. They voted for Hillary. They have larger numbers, right? And they overwhelmingly voted Hillary, like by like a margin of 90% to like 10%. But when you start looking at key battleground states like Ohio and others, or Georgia, and it's like even if that person wins by a slim margin, they get all the electoral votes in that state. And then they add to that greater number, and you have to win at least 270 electoral votes to become president to get a majority, right? And then you're in there. So when people always say, oh, my vote doesn't matter, it does matter. You just got to understand how it works. And this is why voting in all aspects of government are important. But today we're talking about the president, so I won't even get into local elections. I won't confuse you. But that's how president works. Now, let's talk about the power the president actually has. All right, number 1, commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That's why they big dog, big capitan. All these admirals, all these generals that served for all these years, they still hold themselves in honor and respect to by the guidance of the president of the United States. If he says we're going to war, we go. You stand at attention, you salute, and you say yes sir, and you keep it moving, right? And we'll get into some more about the advisement of how the president decides if he's going to war in the first place. It's not just, there should never be a dictatorship like one guy is suggesting, Donald Trump. This is a thing where they should get advisement from key people in office. And a good leader will listen to those that have more experience, because typically the president doesn't have a lot of military background. We don't have that many Eisenhowers or George W. Bush, where people actually served in the military. There's a lot of them like Ronald Reagan, Obama, Clinton, Biden, Trump. These guys didn't serve in the military, right? So they don't have any actual military experience on their own. So they really have to rely on those who they're going to get guidance and counsel from. We're going to talk a little bit more about that guidance and counsel. But anyways, commander-in-chief, they have veto power over congressional legislation, meaning Congress pushes the laws through, right? Then they go through the House. The president can say, I want to veto that law, saying, nah, we ain't doing that. Y'all want to support gay marriage? I don't want to do it. No. They could easily, well, keep in mind that was a Republican Congress. But let's say if Obama was against it, he could have vetoed it and said, nah, we ain't bring that into power. They could keep on trying, but he could veto if he wants it. Or keep in mind with bills, there may be a section of the bill they don't agree with. So they might disagree with the bill at large. They may veto it because they have a certain platform they're on. And there's like, oh, I can't let this piece pass because this is going to make me look bad. So they might veto the bill. They have veto power, right? This is part of the whole checks and balances of our federal government. They have the appoint power. That means to nominate federal judges. Trump did a lot of this when he was in office. They can nominate federal judges, ambassadors meaning like U.S. ambassadors. Every country we work with, they have an embassy, and therefore they have ambassadors that work on our behalf to increase commerce and trade, and also diplomatic relationships, right? If you came here in D.C., you go over there around some of these key streets, like in the Northwest area, you'll see like all of these different embassy homes where different ambassadors from other countries live here doing the same thing, work with the U.S. government, trying to get us to source maybe bananas from their country, maybe to do more joint projects to make commerce easier for American businesses to go over there and set up factories and things of that nature, right? So they have appointment power and other high-ranking officials, but they have to be approved by the Senate. So therefore, everybody who ends up going to the president's cabinet, they get confirmed by the Senate. Judges as well, they have to be confirmed by the Senate. So when we see them U.S. justices go, this is why who you vote for Congress is important, and actually who you vote for Senate is very important, because then they get confirmation power or whoever the president is then suggesting for that role. Doesn't happen unless the Senate appoints them in, says, all right, well, we see who you want. All right, we'll let them through. All right. Then also they have the power to pardon individuals for federal crimes, not state crimes. Only a governor can handle that. We'll talk about that in later episodes. But when we start talking about for pardon power, these are federal crimes. So the FBI at your door, you got the IRS locking you up for something. They can then go in there and pardon you for federal crimes, right? We've seen Donald Trump pardon Kodak Black and Lil Wayne. So that's how they got out. But yet there were still 5 black men that died while he was in office that he could have got out, that they proved that there was evidence that proved that these men were not guilty. So I guess after he took up that banner against the Central Park 5, I guess he figured he's going to kill 5 innocent black men one way or another. And he did. 5 black men died on Donald Trump's watch. He could have even offered them a stay, meaning we postpone their death judgment, right? But and allow that time for that evidence to take place, so that way they can then turn down those cases and prove their freedom. But not Donald Trump. He said, nah, kill them. Let them die. And it made sense because he took up a page in the New York Times of his own money suggesting that 5 innocent other black men should die. Thank God they were able to make freedom when the evidence came out that they weren't guilty. So you have pardon power. You have the ability to negotiate treaties with foreign nations. Of course, that has to be ratified by the Senate. See, a lot of checks and balances. They have executive orders to direct executive branch operations. Let's talk about executive orders. Executive orders and laws are 2 different things, but they work exactly the same. The main difference is that an executive order is a law that can be issued by the president, and it's a lot faster than passing a law. The catch is, though, it could be immediately taken away by the next president. So if you make it a law, it's a much harder to then overturn that law, because it would literally take an act of Congress to overturn it. When it's just an executive order, the next president can just have opposing thoughts towards that executive order and just automatically get rid of it as soon as they come into office. So when we talk about can a president do more, Obama for the black community. Another good example is when we passed that law for Asian hate. I believe that was under Obama, right? When all those Asian women died in Atlanta, or was that Joe Biden? Either way, they put out an executive order, and then Congress then followed suit and made a law to make it stamp, right? So when we talk about can a president be pro-black or pro this issue, yes, they can. They can issue an executive order. Now, the catch is, will it stay? And that's where you have to communicate and work with Congress to get that passed as an actual law, so that way its staying power could, hold a little better. But they have executive orders. They're the chief diplomat in shaping foreign policy and international relations. They convene or adjourn Congress in special circumstances, meaning you can call all Congress together to say, I need y'all to vote on a law. I need us to talk about this. We need to create a budget. So they can convene office, right? They can ensure laws are faithfully executed as head of the executive branch. That's their job, making sure that, hey, when we pass these laws, what's the plan of action to make sure these laws are properly executed? What penalties are we going to have, right? They deliver the State of the Union address. This is important because it outlines policy and priorities and the legislative agenda, primarily to Congress, but then they actually film it now so that we can all see it to understand, well, what's the president's plan? I understand what I ran under, but with new circumstances or new developments, they address typically once a year a State of the Union. The State of the Union is a very important thing that everybody should chime into, right? It's like, all right, what's the plan? What's the plan of action? CEOs do this with their own companies. You'll see like yearly kickoffs, and they say, hey, here's the plan. This is what we plan to do to ensure that our stakeholders have XYZ. The president with America does the same thing. And then they have power to recognize foreign governments and legitimize diplomatic relations. This is big because when we talk about our standing in Africa, South America, what we can do better in the Congo, understanding what's going on with Hamas and Israel, we have a chance to recognize various states of power and legitimize government. So when we talk about, oh, well, what can we really do in Africa? Well, it's primarily the president's job to do that. He can do that. Now, obviously, there's a process working with NATO, working with the G7, working within the UN, right, to get these things done. But they can work with these countries to legitimize them. We can actually help Africa out. We really can, because the president has that power. And then by the ambassadors he's promoting, or sorry, appointing, and things of that nature, we get the job done, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about the duties of the let's see who I want to go to next. So yeah, let's talk about the duties of the presidential cabinet. This is big. I'm not gonna go over vice president because they do a lot of the same thing as a support to that. They also are the breaker of any Senate election. So let's say if the Senate are deadlocked, if it's a tie, the vice president gets to be the tiebreaker. That's like the main thing to bring up. So that's why I was kind of wondering, like, do I want to go over that? I won't waste a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time left, so I want to move by pretty quickly. But this information is available to you. If you want to see where I'm at, all you have to do is go to this website right here. Here, let me share my page. You go to whitehouse.gov about the White House house. And you just go on here. So you go to the whitehouse.gov and you can learn more about your president and the duties thereof. It's right there. This is where I just pull my information from. If y'all wanted to know, that's where I get it from, right? So anyways, the presidential cabinet is big because once again, part of the power of the president is nominating various secretaries to the presidential cabinet. And why is this important? Because of their power. Because obviously the president has a lot of responsibilities. But then we have all these various cabinets of power. We have everything from the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Interior, Department of Justice, Department of Labor, Department of State, Department of Transportation, Department of Treasury, Department of Veteran Affairs, right? And then you also have smaller agencies that work outside of those. Some of the other big agencies like Department of Justice, U.S. Marshals, they fall under DOJ, right? But then you got like Homeland Security, you have groups like FEMA and all of that, they fall under that. So like there's other smaller departments out there, or agencies you know of, they're represented under here. Department of Defense, you're talking about like your Army, your Navy, Air Force. You're also talking about Defense Intelligence Agency. You're talking about the CIA. All of those fall under the Department of Defense. So it's important to understand how these work. And now, what are the responsibilities of these various appointed individuals? Policy implementation. Oversee the implementation of laws and policies within their respective departments. Advise the president. This is big. Advise the president, meaning the reason why they're being appointed to the position, because they can provide specialized advice and expertise to the president on issues related to their department, defense, education, or even the treasury, right? Manage federal agencies, lead and manage operations of federal agencies within their department. Budget oversight, huge. Oversee the enforcement of regulations and federal laws under the department's jurisdiction, right? Also, public representation. They need to coordinate with Congress, work with Congress on legislative matters related to their department's responsibilities, and advocate for relevant policies. Emergency response. So we're talking like Homeland Security and national disasters. That's why FEMA now falls under Department of Homeland Security. International relations, if it's within the scope of what they do, i.e. the Secretary of State for leading the State Department, engage in international negotiations and diplomacy within their areas of expertise. And also the vice president, keep in mind, because they're part of the cabinet, they may work in cohesion with these various departments. So we've seen very recently Kamala trying to help negotiate with Hamas and Israel to release those hostages and stuff like that. She's working with the Department with the head of the State Department, right, to get something going there, the Secretary of State. And then also executive order execution, ensure proper execution of the president's executive orders related to the department's work. So if there was to be an executive order for housing, then they would work directly, in this case, currently right now with Pete Buttigieg, to say, hey, we need to do this right now. Take your company's, take your, not your company, but your department's resources and get XYZ thing done. And that's good until the president either puts a time limit on that executive order or the next president comes in and gets rid of it, right? Because there's no law to support it, right? So anyways, and some key departments we need to look at, because when we're talking about the things that matter most to Americans, there's about 6 departments we should always pay close, well, sorry, 7 departments we should always pay close attention to as to who our president is appointing to lead these various departments. Number 1, Department of Defense. They oversee the U.S. So, and there's a secretary for each one of these. So we got the Department of Defense, oversees the U.S. military, and is responsible for national security and military policy, manages a large portion of the federal budget and defense contracts, because a lot of our money is military spending. The Secretary of Defense is a key advisor to the president on military and defense matters. Typically, this person should come from our security groups, should be former military themselves, right? That's what you want. You want somebody who's been a general, who's led a large organization within our military to be advising the president on how we should move in a military manner. You don't want somebody who's come out of Wall Street trying to tell the president how to go to war. If you didn't strap a gun to your back at any point in your life and put your life on the line, and you put your life on the line the day you join. I'm going to make that clear. If you join the military, you put your life on the line, because at any point, they could tell you, you go into the sandbox. You're going here. There is no escaping war. Now, you can get out conveniently when you know stuff is about to go down instead of re-upping. So let's say you're like Tim Walz. They're saying he dodged the war, but keep in mind, his time was up. And he decided, well, no, I think I'm going to run for, I think at the time he ran for Congress or governor. I think he ran for Congress. He got out the military. I think he was in the National Guard, and he decided he wanted to run for Congress. He didn't want to stay in anymore. So people could say he ran from war, but you can't really say that to somebody who was in the military for 24 years, because during that 24 years, at any time, he could have been deployed. It's one thing if he tries to fake a sick call and get out of it, but in this case, during that 24 years, you can be deployed, right? So I think this is important, but you want somebody with military background. Next one you need to look at is Department of State. Handles U.S. foreign policy, international relationships and diplomacy, engages in treaty negotiations, and maintains relations with foreign governors or governments. The Secretary of State is one of the president's top advisors on foreign policy and is often considered the most senior member of the cabinet after vice president. Meaning, if something was to happen to the president and then the vice president, typically the person who would assume the duty of president is typically going to be the Secretary of State. Very important role. Keep in mind, George Bush gave that role to first Colin Powell and then next Condoleezza Rice, who had experience in foreign policy because they either came out of military or our various security agencies, right? Next one, Department of Treasury, because we all care about our money, okay? Like, we care about our money, big time, right? Department of Treasury manages the nation's finances, including the Federal Reserve, taxation, and public debt. Oversees key financial institutions, including the Internal Revenue Service and the U.S. Mint. The Secretary of Treasury plays a crucial role in economic policy and financial regulation. Speaking of these roles, let's look at currently who's in there. I just want to show y'all some things. And once again, you can go to these websites. They're here available to you. So this one right here, I'm at treasury.gov, and you can look up Janet Yellen, who's our current Secretary of Treasury, right? I'm not going to read her whole background. Just go to the website on your own free time. But she's currently serving under the Biden administration. And if you read her resume, I think she looks pretty qualified. Her background, she's been serving with the Federal Reserve for years, literally since 1994 under Bill Clinton, right? And she's done a lot around money. She actually went to the London School of Economics. She went to Bard College at Brown University of Michigan, all studying various forms of economics and things of that nature. Like I would assume she knows a little something about money. That's what she does for a living. Now, just to compare, this was Donald Trump's guy. Now, he also has a pretty impressive background. He was the chief executive officer of Dune Capital Management. He founded One West Bank Group LLC. He was part of, what else did he do? He sat on a couple of boards, the Herscher Museum right here on the mall at the Smithsonian. But more important than that, he traveled a lot with Donald Trump. He was also the finance chairman for the Donald J. Trump for president campaign, right? So it's obvious how he got his role. I ain't making this up, y'all. It's right here for y'all to see. Don't get mad at me. The information's right there for you. So just saying. So just wanted to show that real quick. I had that already queued up ready for y'all, right? So then also you have the Department of Justice, another important piece of government. Someone else that the president can take care of these things. Because like, the reason I brought up Treasury is we talk about the money. I'm bringing up Department of Justice because when we're talking about being tough on crime, that's Department of Justice. Department is responsible for enforcing federal laws, representing the U.S. in legal matters, and overseeing federal enforcement agencies like the FBI, U.S. Marshals, a bunch of others. I think there's like 8 key agencies that fall under DOJ. You start thinking about places like ICE. I think U.S. Border is also under there, or maybe that might be Homeland Security. I mix those up sometimes. I know ICE is definitely DOJ. But yeah, I kind of mix those up because ICE and Homeland Security are very similar to each other, right? But whoever leads that department, that's DOJ. That's a pretty big deal. I would imagine you would have a legal background, right? Next one, Department of Homeland Security protects the U.S. from domestic and international threats, including terrorism, cyber attacks, and natural disasters, i.e. that's why FEMA rolls up under it. Manages border security. All right, so I was right the first time. So manages border security, immigration services, so that's ICE, right? Disaster responses through agencies like FEMA. Also Customs and Border Protection, and then TSA. Also Coast Guard actually falls under Department of Homeland Security. They don't fall under DOD. They actually fall under Department of Homeland Security, right? Then number 6, Department of Health and Human Services oversees public health, welfare, and social services, including Medicare, Medicaid, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, based down in Atlanta, but they also have offices here, actually very close to my house. They play a central role in the healthcare policy in response to public health crisis. And then last but not least, you have key agencies, once again, to look for, with 7 of them. This is the 7th, Department of Energy. Manages the nation's nuclear weapons program and oversees energy policy, including renewable energy, fossil fuels, nuclear energy, plays a significant role in research and development of energy technologies and national security related to energy infrastructure. So when we're talking about the power grid, when we're talking about EV, electric vehicles, when we're talking about solar energy, when we talk about global warming, these are various things that fall up under the Department of Energy. And keep in mind, with most of these agencies, there's smaller departments that also are managed under that. It is a huge undertaking. But there are a couple of more I want to bring up before we end today's broadcast. So another big one is the Housing and Urban Development Agency. You know why it's big? Because you're talking about policies for like homelessness. When we start talking about, oh, why are there so many homeless people? Why isn't the market, why is the market in a situation where things aren't affordable? You know, how are they going to fix stuff? The Department of HUD is big, right? Basically, their agency is responsible for national policies and programs that address America's housing needs, improve and develop the nation's communities, and enforce fair housing laws. The department plays a major role in supporting home ownership for low and moderate income families through its mortgage and insurance and rent subsidies, right? When you start looking at FHA, like this is my man Brent loves FHA, right? Because a lot of people, when they buy their homes, they get FHA lending. FHA will lend up to 100% of your home, right? And you may only have to put 10 or 5% down, sometimes 20% down, depending on what bank you go with, right? So this is a big one. The reason why I brought this up is because just wanted to share this with you real quick. And once again, all you have to do is go to HUD.gov you see our current, this is under Biden, we have Adrian Todman. Now, she just stepped in as of, technically as the deputy secretary, meaning she falls under but she's acting because the current secretary is out. So now she's in covering. But her background is in hood. If you go read up on here, you see her background came out of hood. She's been doing hood her whole life. She's actually done a lot of cool programs to help serve military members in the DC area who couldn't find housing. If you read up on her, she's really dope. But then under Donald Trump, we had Dr. Ben Carson, right? An amazing guy that should be celebrated. I will say that much. I'm not going to hate on him. Dr. Ben Carson was dope. You know why? He actually was successful separating type 2 vertical craniopagus twins in 1997 in South Africa. Because of that, all of these crazy medals came his way because he did something that had never been done before, right? He also separated in 1987 two conjoined twins. I mean, when I say he was a leader in some of these surgeries, amazing. His story's amazing. That's why the NAACP recognized him. He got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. A great guy. Now, with all this medical experience, one has to wonder, why the hell, and I do mean hell, why the hell is he the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development? What the hell does he know about housing someone with mental issues or making sure that financial rates are correct to make sure that someone can afford a home? Now, if he was over Health and Human Services, or maybe if he was appointed to be the Surgeon General, I would get that. But why the hell is he over hood? Is it because Donald Trump saw the term urban and said, hey, I'll put a black man over that? Makes you wonder. I'm just saying. When you're voting for president, it's not just the president. It's a whole, you can't as president do this job by yourself. You need a team. You need a team. All right? And that wasn't the right man to put on the team. Period. Okay? Dr. Ben Carson, amazing guy, but why was he on the team? Now, like I said, I keep things fair. So let's go. I'm going to go to my screen again. Current Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I wouldn't have put him up there. I'm pretty sure there was somebody more qualified than Pete Buttigieg. I'm being honest with you. Now, has he done a bad job in it? I guess it depends where you are. I mean, the things he's done on EVs, advising that we actually push that timeline back. He saw that the president's initial want to push EV consumption was a little high. He wanted to get rid of gas cars, I think initially like in 2030. Under Pete Buttigieg, he's worked with the president to push that timeline back. They're looking more so like 2050 right now. I don't see 2050 happening, and that's why they've pushed that back even further, right? So, but was he really qualified? Not to me. I mean, he has a cool background in the sense, I mean, he was Mayor of South Bend. Keep in mind, South Bend was where, oh man, I just thought about it earlier. One of those innocent black people died in South Bend, and that was under Pete Buttigieg's watch. So hence why he was never elected for president back when he was running back then in the primary against Joe Biden, because they was killing him on that banner. And I'm like, dude, how are you going to talk about equity and equality? And under your watch, the police killed an innocent black person, a story that went national, by the way. Just saying. They love talking about the fact that, you know, he's the first gay person, openly gay person, to be on anybody's cabinet. Okay, and that's cool. All right, whatever, his personal choice. But your personal choice for love shouldn't be a big part of why you're appointed to anything. And if I offend somebody, I'm just saying me being in love with chocolate black women shouldn't be a means of why me being appointed to a role is a big deal. It shouldn't be. Just saying. If I offended you, oh well. Just putting that out there. Was he the most qualified person though for the job? No. I mean, cool little background and everything. A lot of people think he might be the first openly gay president one day. Very well possible. But his background's not all that impressive. Has he done a crappy job as transportation secretary? I don't think so. Just because in previous roles, I worked very closely with transportation. So just knowing what's being done, I won't say he's in trash, but he's not that impressive. I'm just gonna be honest. Now, if we look at Trump's person, and mind you, I'm comparing Biden to Trump because these are the most recent guys. If you want to see the history of everybody who's ever served a role, all you have to do to go to whitehouse.gov and they keep a list of it, right? So once again, I'm actually at whitehouse.gov, and that's where you're able to see this information. It's showing Trump's White House, his cabinet, but you can actually look up any president and see everybody who served under him in those roles. Now, Elaine Chao is interesting though, right? Also has a great background. She's done a lot of stuff in government. But she used to be the Secretary of Labor, actually, under George Bush. Then Trump, to try to legitimize his cabinet, he actually went after Elaine Chao. Now, something interesting about Elaine Chao actually ended up resigning after January 6th under Trump. She was so disgusted by that. Keep in mind, she only had a few days left in office, but she resigned after that. She was disgusted by that. She has a pretty impressive history, though, as far as the work she's done. She was probably one of the more qualified people he had, straight up. But then another big one, we didn't talk about this, but when we talk about education, because education ends up being a really big thing that comes up in elections. We talk about pre-K, we talk about, having that. Let's look at the current person, the Secretary of Education, right? So I'm gonna share my screen. Dr. Miguel Cardona, and once again, you can see his profile if you go to ed.gov. You can see his information. These are not hard things to look up. You can go to the .gov and get the information. Don't Wikipedia it. Wikipedia could be wrong, guys. Go directly to these websites. So if you go to U.S. Department of Education, they have the whole breakdown on Miguel Cardona. I actually had the pleasure of having a few meetings with Miguel Cardona in a past role that I fulfilled. I am intimately aware of what he's done, especially in Connecticut, where he came from, where he's the Commissioner of Education. Some big things he did when he was over there. Miguel Cardona led efforts during the pandemic to make sure that kids can have distance learning. He was actually he did so well at it. That's how he got the attention of Joe Biden to actually be his education secretary. I thought it was a great pick, honestly. He has over 20 years of experience in the role. He was a solid fit for the job. And what he did in Connecticut, making them a leader in education during the pandemic, the whole nation ended up following suit, various universities. And I was happy to be a part of that work, not directly working like under the Secretary of Education, but in my capacity, in my role as a civilian operator, working for just a regular commercial company. We did a lot of work at that time in that. And it was cool to be a part of what was going on there. So that's really dope. So shout out to him. But if we look at who Donald Trump had appointed, and people are like, Juan, why are you doing this? Because you need to know who your president, when your president is saying they're going to do this about education, we're going to do this about crime, we're going to do this about defense. Well, who are you getting to advise you or how you handle these matters? So this is why this is important to go over, right? And then last but not least on this subject, Betsy DeVos, Elizabeth DeVos, she was the Secretary of Education. Now, in her thing, they spent more time talking about why she thinks education is important and what drew her to it, and the fact that she did some volunteer work. Keep in mind, every successful, and I will call her successful, she has a very successful career as a chairman. She served on numerous boards and investment management firms and enterprise. She has a lot of background when it comes to money, right? And serving on boards. She didn't have a lot of background in education. She didn't go to school for education. Matter of fact, when they grilled her on her various understandings of education, she was trash. And keep in mind, and she only has a bachelor's of arts degree, right? That's it. She doesn't have an extensive background in education. She's not a PhD like Dr. Miguel Cardona, right? Just saying, she doesn't have that background. She didn't go through the education system being a principal or a teacher or leading an educational strategy for an actual state of power. She was just kind of like, I did some volunteer stuff. I've done plenty of volunteer hours. I was sitting on the PTSA for the state of Maryland. I was actually a delegate, right? For my daughter's school at the time. But I don't think that would really qualify me to be a director of education at a federal level because I may end up having some success in business. I don't think that would qualify for me, but that's why Trump selected her. So once again, look at these people profiles. When you're trying to decide, well, who has the better cabinet, go look it up. This is free public information, and it's going to be big on who you elect for president. I wanted to go over this as number one, we need to understand what power the president has because people like oversell every election, but you don't want to be oversold. I know I'm slightly over time, but then I did start a little bit late. Just give me about 5 more minutes. We'll be done, y'all. But this is really important when we're selecting somebody for president, because remember, they need a really big team to get the job done. So you're not just voting for one person or two persons. You're voting for two people who are going to appoint various, at least 13 other people in key capacities. And then we're not even talking about these various judges who are going to be appointed to multiple roles. And then when these key people are appointed to roles, they bring with them a whole team. They can actually fire and hire people within their various agencies. And keep in mind, these agencies, they have huge budgets. If we're talking about HUD, they have a budget of $40 billion a year. If we're talking about Department of Interior, and so when you're talking about like Federal Reserves, Wildlife Services, Geological Surveys, a lot of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all those things that fall under DOI, that's a $16 billion budget. When you're looking at Department of Human Health and Human Services, that's $700 billion budget. That's literally 65,000 employees. When we're talking about the Department of Energy, we're talking about crazy budgets. If you're looking at Department of Education, that's $68.6 billion with over 4,000 employees. Department of Defense, literally 700,000 civilian personnel, 1.1 million citizens who serve in the National Guard or Reserve Forces, about 1.4 men and women who serve in active duty, right? And that budget, they don't even list, but I can tell you it's over half of our government spending every year annually. Big budgets, right? That's a lot to be responsible for. That's more than some of our Fortune 500 companies out there that exist in the stock market. That's huge. So when you vote for president, you're not just talking about one person or two people. We get so caught up in the one person, but not what that one person is going to charge other persons to do on their behalf. And those persons are also charged with advising that one person on what to do. So this is why understanding how your government works matters. It really matters. This is not a laughing thing or passive thing. You can't just say, I'm not going to vote this year. You can't just say, oh, my vote don't matter. You can't just say, oh, it don't matter. It's all staged. And then you complain about why your lights suck, or you complain about your money, and you complain about people going to war, and then you complain about what are we doing to help Africa. Well, this is how the president makes a difference. This is how. This is why we're explaining it. F all that, oh, you should vote conservative for this, and you should vote progressive for this. No, we ain't talking about any of that. When your vote is cast, understand what your vote means, the power of that office you just voted for, and this is how it's going to affect your bottom line as a U.S. citizen, period. This is what we're talking about, folks. So when people say, oh, I don't vote for president, I just do local elections, you still stupid. Because that means you don't care about how our armed forces are going to be deployed. You don't care about how we respond to disaster relief. So when people were complaining about Hurricane Katrina, well, what is the president doing? What was his secretary doing that was over Department of Homeland Security? He had a lot of say-so on how we would respond to that disaster. You understand? It's bigger than your president. It's bigger than Nino Brown, to quote a movie, right? For those that know the culture. So let's start taking this thing a little bit more seriously, right? Because it's important. That's why we had this show. We're going to be continuing this series going forward. Next, I'm going to probably cover Congress, the legislative branch, and we're going to break that down next week. That should be a lot of fun, right? Because you need to understand why we vote for these congressmen. Why are some of these people still here for years? How they get to stay there? We're going to break all that down, all right? But on a happy note, let me get some happy music going. Because now that I know this all works, we'll do this. This is kind of lighthearted. Oh, it's only a minute. I'm going to need more than a minute. This is 3 minutes. Let's do this one. Y'all should be able to hear my music good in the background this time because I tested it out already. Matter of fact, I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more. Yeah, y'all got my background music going? Cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some quick shout outs. Got some birthdays and some weddings and stuff like that. So we always like to close on a positive note. If you ever want me to shout you out, send me a little text or a message. If I don't catch it on social media myself, I'll shout you out on the Nitty Gritty Show. I don't charge for this. This is just love. This is just love, people. I like to show some love every now and then. So Anyways, birthdays. Shout out to my pastor, Pastor Watley. His birthday's coming. He's about to be 51 years old. He's about 10 years exactly older than me. Good brother. So if you want to, come join us at Kingdom Fellowship next Sunday. We're going to be celebrating his birthday. He'll be back preaching. He takes off typically during the month of August. My pastor gets the summer. That's dope. But yeah, shout out to Pastor Matthew Watley. Going to be celebrating his birthday, 51 years. Shout out to my man, Gerald Holcomb, my people. 42 look good on you, brother. I did not realize you were older than me like that. I thought I was older than you because of how young you look. Shout out to you. Shout out to my cousin Carl White. Shout out to my homie Keisha Lee. Shout out to my homegirl Renee Smith. Both of them Zetas. Like, that's interesting. Y'all birthday was like on the same day. That's cool. That's a small little thing I noticed. Shout out to Reverend Daryl Williams. Shout out to Devontae Harden. Shout out to my man Perry Harden. Shout out to one of my favorite artists, Brandon Avant. If anybody has ever seen the picture, like the cartoon picture of me and Katrina, I actually have an actual printout of it right here in my office space. Shout out, Brandon did that picture for us. So he's really dope. Check him out, Brandon Avant. Also shout out to my homegirl Raina Polite. And then also, y'all know me, I like to celebrate love, y'all. So shout out to Will and Michelle Jawando. 20 years of marriage. Still kicking, 4 beautiful children. Man, and if y'all don't know, Will is a councilman at large here in Montgomery County in Maryland. Great guy. He's a friend of the show. He's been on the show a few times. Shout out to Will. He's great. Matter of fact, now that I got my Zoom working, I can Zoom call you guys and bring you on the show. So just wanted to put that out there. If anybody ever wants to join us, you don't have to be in the DMV anymore. Just get you on Zoom. I seen the link. We chop it up right here in front of everybody. Also, shout out to Hassan McRae. Just got married this weekend to a beautiful black queen. Shout out to you, my brother. I've been knowing Hassan. Hassan is one of the few people in the world outside of family I've been knowing since elementary school. Him and his sister Tiffany and Chanel. I've been knowing these guys forever. So shout out to Hassan getting married. That's what's up, man. Congratulations to you, my brother. And then also shout out to Robert and Kirsten Turner. 25 years of marriage. Shout out to Kenny and Keisha Smith. 7 years of marriage. Shout out to the Crockers. 35 years of marriage. Shout out to Michael and Talisha Rivera. 9 years of marriage. What? Shout out to Ian and Carla McAllister, 13 years of marriage. Then we have Carl and Karen Smith, 42 years of marriage. And then the Spans, 35 years of marriage. Oh my God, is God good. Love does exist, people. Believe in it. Yo, if you want your business shouted out during the show, hit us up. Shout out, actually, there's 2 other people. Let me put some reggae music on in the background. There's 2 other people I'm gonna shout out because I see them in the comments. Shout out to Dr. Deneen Fields. She's a leader in education. She's got some things that's gonna be popping off in education. That's somebody that y'all might want to keep watching here in the Maryland area. Got some big things going. And shout out to my man Brooker. He's a real estate agent with Keller Williams. Great guy. If you're ever looking to buy a house out here in the DC area, Maryland, holla at Brent. Great dude. He actually helped me with my house. So great guy. That's my man. And he's a huge supporter of the show, both of them. So I just wanted to shout out those 2 individuals to stay here. Look, guys, I'm overtime, but thank you for kicking it with me so long. I really appreciate you. We'll be back on the, let's see, today's the 8th. So that means we'll be back on the, shoot, I can't think of the time right. I can't do math. We'll be back on the 15th. We'll be back on the 15th, 8 o'clock, right here, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure you chime in. We're going to break this stuff down. We're going to communicate. I know a lot of you watching football right now, and it's always HTTC, hail to the Commanders, all right? Or the Redskins, as they used to be called. So, and I don't care that we lost. I don't care about that. We still going to the Super Bowl. That's how I feel. That's how I feel, and that's how I'm going to roll. But yeah, shout out to all the football fans. I know y'all watching. Y'all be blessed and have a good one. Yeah, man. Thank you guys for watching the show. We out. It's your boy Jay DeCosta. My better half is downstairs watching online. And we love you guys. Thank you for rocking with us. We back, y'all. We out of here.